What's up, you guys? Today we're going to show you guys how to do a coolant line bypass or delete on a VG30DE or TT. Today we're going to be working on a TT car. However, that just means there's going to be more things in the way and more things we kind of got to move to get to what we're trying to get to. There's not a whole bunch of differences other than just that between the NA and TT. A couple vacuum line diagrams are slightly different, so you'll just go accordingly from there. What you need for this job is you need about 4 foot of 8mm or 5/16 fuel hose, just whatever. Usually I use 5/16 fuel line because they never have 8mm coolant hose at the parts store. You also need about 5 foot of 4mm vacuum hose in total, so that way you can reroute your EGR and your carbon canister line that attaches up to the balance tube. But now we're headed over to Aaron's, so let's go do the bypass on his Z. Here's the Z we're going to be working on today. This is a 1990 twin turbo C32. Luckily, it's automatic, so if we need to, we got a little bit of arm access down here for our PCV valves or PCV hose. We got pretty much all my tools laid out here. You will need an intake gasket likely. Fel Pro will suffice, OEM is recommended. A torque wrench, so you can set the intake bolts torque correctly, and your balance tube. You may need balance tube O-rings. I don't believe we're going to need any here. But a big tool I recommend is go to your local Harbor Freight and get a pick set. This one will help significantly. But this one is my favorite for getting those pesky injector connectors down here. Luckily, I already sold Aaron some new style injectors and he had them wired in and replaced. And he just got it all put back together after having the PTU fixed and the car's leaking coolant. So that is why we are here to do this delete, because it is leaking out the back in one of those really hard to reach areas that is virtually impossible to see. Sorry for straying off topic, but this pick with the combination of this magnet will save you all kinds of headaches and troubles. You can telescope the magnet down on the clip as you remove it with the pick. Typical Phillips and flathead as well, and a little bit of oil for our fuel lines for reinstalling. Got an impact just for ease of things here to make it quicker. So let's get started. Sorry about the lights if they are maybe overbearing or not enough. We got a bright and an old OG light here. But first things first, generally I say unhook the battery completely, remove it from the car, because we are going to be removing the grounds from the plenum and we don't want to risk any damage to our ECU. If you have an NA car, this will all be straightforward and corresponding to you as well, so don't worry, it'll be easy, much easier for you to do than it will be for a twin turbo. There's just more hoses, more things, less room. So we just pulled the battery out. Once the battery's out, go ahead and remove your throttle cover, and you can go ahead and remove all of your boost pipes. You got 8mm here for the hose clamps, and either 4 or 5mm Allens. Sometimes they're 10mm. People switch them out. If you remove those, 14mm, pop them out, move the shaft up, pop it out, and then snake it out the way. You may have some 10mm bolts or brackets holding it up. Just remove those as needed. Next step I would say is to remove your balance tube. Remove the vacuum hoses associated with so. Here. Remove your idle air control back here. And then while you're at it, you can go ahead and loosen your brake booster hose right here and pull it out to the side. That'll give you access to all of your coil packs to where you can remove them, because you have to pull your coil packs to pull your engine. Coil packs sit in at an angle and you'll never be able to pull the plenum with them being angled into the heads. While you're here, go ahead and remove these 10mm on both sides, because this one holds the wiring harness and this little harness bracket, and this one holds your idle air hose that goes up to your intake. You can actually go ahead and remove that. I prefer to do it up here and the hose clamp down here and pull it all off as one unit. Sometimes I'll remove it from right here if the hose is nice enough. Once you get this hose off, you will actually have these couple little clips right here on the idle air hard hose. Just use a flathead to push the clip down and pry it off. Also, as you pull each of your vacuum hoses, remember where you put them. These two are put together. There will be a vacuum line diagram that you can follow that I will post a link to in the description. But this went here, and these two right here. Pull this balance tube, and now you see the last thing on the balance tube is that little hose. That actually goes to a hard line below the plenum that then comes up here to your carbon canister. We're going to bypass that and run a straight vacuum hose to it. It also just came to my attention that this twin turbo has 2 vacuum hoses on this side. I assume this one goes to the boost solenoid. If you aren't putting your hardware back, make sure you put it somewhere you will remember it. Now that we have access, let's go ahead, remove every single connection, 6 injectors, 6 coil packs, 2 TPS. You have 2 O2s on each side, here and here. Knock sensor, VTC, both sides. Idle air, that might be the fast idle. Then you have the idle air and AAC, yellow and blue connector down here. You can wait till you get the plenum off to get those because they are a little tricky to get. However, the pick and magnet method will help you significantly. Sorry I'm not showing you guys entirely how to do everything. That would make this video an hour long, and I feel like as long as I tell you the direct points of where to look at and focus on, you'll be able to figure it out. Alrighty you guys, so we're back home. We're not at Aaron's anymore. We went ahead and just fixed the car how it was. I'm not sure how much of the rest of the video I'm going to edit out to show you guys. We'll probably just show you straightforward. So I just want to clarify for anything that may be out of context at this point. But here, the engine that I just gave up on because it has a bent crank, I will show you guys how to go through and finish this process. I still need to remove my balance tube, but my fuel lines are already removed. To remove your fuel lines, you have 2 bolts right here for your fuel dampener, and you have 2 bolts right here for your fuel pressure regulator. I recommend to just cut all these hoses while you're here, so that way you can change them and not have to worry about them in the future. Sorry for all the hoods and stuff. It's literally 10 degrees outside, so I'm just trying to make this work. Always use a screwdriver to fit the Phillips on these stock clamps, and the best angle that you can get this one is about straight on right here. I don't have fuel hose removers or like a tool to remove them, so what I use is I put pliers right here, and after I clamp it, I use a hammer to tap the line off, so that way I don't damage it. If it starts to bend your hard lines, just cut the line, replace it. It needs it anyways. For the hard line, you've got 10 mil here, here, down here, and then I like to just remove that whole unit and hang it out the way. Now, since all that's off, you took your wiring harness off. If you couldn't reach these 2 pesky plugs, you can wait to get them till you start to pull your plenum off. So once you have all that off, go ahead, pull each of your 6 coil packs. There's 2 12 mil bolts for each of those. Now that you got all your coil packs out, you're starting to look pretty bare up here on the top side of the plenum. One of the most annoying parts working on a Z is working on the EGR system. Right here, there's 2 10 mil bolts, and you'll need to remove it to drop this pipe, or at least to be able to let this plenum lift off of this EGR pipe right here. You also have these PRVR EGR solenoids on each side. The vacuum diagram link that I include in the description will cover the normal applications for NA, TT, and then there will be one that has all deletes done that will show you kind of where everything's capped and what you still need to route. So there's 2 12 mil bolts here. After you remove these 2 10 mil EGRs, these are going to be way harder on a twin turbo. A flex head ratcheting wrench is going to be your best friend. Right here, just 2 12 mil bolts. Ratcheting wrench works fine. Socket if you can fit it. If not, there's also a 10 mil right here for a hard pipe over on this side for NAs. And the TT charge pipe right here is bolted right there to keep it solid as well. Also, when you're back here, you will have on the side your PCV valves. You'll have a PCV hose running from here. This one's kind of crappy to get to. When you have your battery out, this one right here is very simple to get. Remove both of those, and then your plenum should be about ready to come off. Don't forget to get your EGR pipe on this side as well. Before I get to tearing down much farther, I want to bring something to your attention. This little hard pipe right here, that is for your EGR, where it ties into the solenoid. I'm actually removing mine since I remove all of them. If you can't tell, there's about 40 of them in there. So that hard line comes right back here and ties in. Here's one. So the route comes here, up, back around to this hard line underneath that's attached to these coolant lines we're about to delete, and then it drops down right here and goes to the short hose. You'll remove this once you pull your plenum off and get a little bit more access to see. Chop this, put your new hose on that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, your 4 mil, and you'll run it over here to this. This is if you have EGR. If not, you obviously don't worry about this. But that is how you bypass that, because we will no longer have that hard line there. You can just replace it here, but I really recommend just running a new line all the way around. I really wanted to explain the EGR hard line part, because that's something that you really don't want to have to mess with when the engine and intake, not the engine, but the intake's already bolted back down, because then you just have no clearance back here. Now is the time. We can go ahead and start loosening our plenum. You have 2 bolts in the back. This right here is a bolt. Everyone seems to not think this is a bolt. It just has threads in it for the throttle cover. Bolt, bolts, bolts. Remove each of those. And you got all your bolts loose. And you go ahead, pull up on the plenum. As you pull up, this right here will fight you the whole way. So you need to kind of pry it out, or else when you pull up, you can see it just hugs and gets stuck right inside the plenum. So if you can hold it while you pull, it'll lift out just like that. And if you can pull it to the side and or move it over, just make sure it doesn't jam up while you do the other side. Consider that a very helpful tip. If not, sometimes you'll just sit there and fight yourself over and over. But now that we have the plenum off, we don't really have it off yet. And that is because of these pesky coolant lines that we're here to delete. Also, just pull all your vacuum lines off. I don't go over them all because the vacuum line diagram at the end will cover them all, and it's very, very straightforward. That EGR line is the only one I want to put emphasis on just because of its accessibility. It's not very easy to get to. Now, if you lift your plenum up, you'll see back here you have a couple hoses that are holding you down. I recommend just go ahead and cut them. This side, that hose I showed you on the outside, you want to go ahead and cut that. In a nutshell, anything that's keeping the plenum to the engine, cut the hose. It won't be needed, and we're replacing it anyways. And this is why I like being in the back, because I can give you guys a little bit better representation. This hose right here, snip, and this hose right here. I'll say it now because it's very simple. You can either just cap both of these and you're done, or you run a line and loop it right back to each other. On the driver's side, this is the line that's holding us up. So we'll just go ahead, chop that. This hose right here goes into this hard line at the idle air control, and that's what connects down here to this. So the way we disconnect that is to chop this line right here in the middle, right behind the intake and fuel rail. In a nutshell, this line we loop from here to right here, or cap, completely bypass. Now that you have all 4 hoses, one back here, and 2 over here on the passenger side, go ahead and pull your plenum off and find a table or something and sit the plenum upside down on the table. Now, I don't know how much of this I'm going to explain how to put back together. I'll probably tell you guys just the order, but since I don't have everything in car, vacuum line diagram will explain itself. The wiring harness, I'll cover a couple things for that for you guys, just to kind of tell what's for what, and a couple of order operations. The vacuum line diagram will help you significantly. Now with the 10 mil, pliers, and a razor, we're going to begin the delete. So this hard line, and these lines, this, and all this, we're looking to remove. Typically, people leave this hard line, so you'll just take your hose clamps off both sides, cut the line, remove the hose, and just leave the hard line. You can cut it. I leave it because it's a little bit of a shim for the idle air control back here, for the cold start valve, my fault. To remove this hard line completely, it actually snakes up and around, so you have to remove this top idle air control valve bolt to remove that whole assembly. You don't have to cut them, it just makes them easier to come off sometimes. This one is just cut off. Generally I remove all hose clamps, and we will be back to show you guys everything once we are done. Now that we got the hard lines off, this hard line over here from the driver's side that has the idle air control valve part up here that you had to remove, this hose actually goes up to your balance tube. It goes up and connects to your balance tube from here and here. The other end of it down here goes to your carbon canister. So I removed my whole assembly here instead of just removing it here. So that way we know what nipple this needs to go to on the carbon canister assembly. The other vacuum hose specified at the beginning of the video will take place of this and will go from here to your carbon canister where the end of this hose was connected. You can usually tell because it has this barricade on it that the fuel hose usually has. So now if you look at the plenum, you see it's pretty bare. You have these couple of nipples and whatnot. I did forget to remove that, I just seen, and this. We got really lucky that we didn't have to cut very many of them. We just twisted it off with the pliers. A lot of people, you can, I believe there's pins back here that hold these in that you can drill out and pull out. But I recommend just cutting it or leaving it. If you really don't want it to look tacky from the outside, keep this hose on and keep this hose on. You're not going to see these, they're behind the PCVs, and that'll make everything still look full, functional, and like there's nothing missing. So now we're honestly totally done with the plenum. So again, before we go ahead and just start to reassemble a couple things, just to check over right here, EGR line, go ahead, replace this while you can fit back here. If not, you're going to hate yourself, trust me. If you bought rubber cooling caps, put them right here and right here. If not, just run a little bit of hose, about 6-8 inches, loop that around, cut accordingly to what I said at the beginning of the video. That is what the write-up says that you need, and if not, you'll have a little bit left over. Your pipes won't be as smashed as mine because this is from a wrecked car. You'll put a hose from there and loop it down to here. And I just so happen to have an example over here that's already done. Looped up. And then we have these two right here looped around. I'm not too worried about the kink. There's zero function of this coolant going through these other than to just reroute it back to the rest of the coolant. I really like putting caps on them. They look much cleaner. Now, let's cover a couple things for assembly. Sometimes it's a little frustrating to get your plenum on, mainly because of these EGR bolts. Make sure, just go ahead, clean all your debris out. This is a great time to do valve cover gaskets, you know. While you're in their job, just do it once. Now, once again, before the plenum goes back on, make sure you route that EGR line. What I also like to do before you fully seat the plenum, if you have original PCV valves, try to hook those in. Put the plenum in at an angle so you can hit the fittings, just to make it a little easier. If not, those old hoses do not like to bend. As you can tell, that's bending the pipe more than it's bending the hose. Make sure to lay your new gasket down. I'm just leaving all the old stuff on because I'm not really too worried about this. Keep your knock sensor connector out the way. If you don't have the hard piece, bolted right here. Now, the biggest thing you're going to worry about is your two EGR ports on the side. You're going to want to seat them before you actually seat your plenum down, while also making sure you get this bar in between here. You'll just get hung up on so many things down here with these EGRs still in place. So I just want to let you guys know kind of what to expect for. So we just put that on, like it's on the EGR pipe now, and then watch how much it sits. It goes down like 3 inches. Now this side is very off. Focus, EGR pipe in first, both sides. Now you can worry about centering your plenum. Your gasket likely moved in this whole meantime while you've been trying to put your plenum back on. So what I like to do is either put bolts in it to try to hug the gasket down there, or if I reposition, I'll lift the plenum up slightly. I'll use a flathead and I'll push the gasket over slightly here over by the fuel injectors to get it lined up. As soon as you get one bolt in place, you can kind of shake the plenum. You can see how much it moves back and forth. These EGR ports on each side will constantly pull your plenum to one side or the other, likely from being pried on in the future, so your bolt holes will not line up perfectly. So it's really a fight to get your gasket to line up while also getting your bolt to thread. Once you get one to thread, work on one in the back or even closer right here, so you can try to center the gasket up. Shake the plenum a little bit, lift it to free up the gasket and allow it to move accordingly. Once you go to tighten the bolts down, I like to do this pattern at 12 foot-pounds of torque. I believe the torque spec is 12 to 15. Since the threads are aluminum, I try to play it safe and not have to try to rip them out. Torque spec should be the same for your plenum up here. balance tube, sorry, not plenum. Once you get all of your plenum bolts bolted down, you can go ahead and get your EGR. Once you do your EGR, you can worry about your 12 mils for the brackets on the side. And also, if you didn't do your PCVs, throw your PCVs on now if they have a little bit of flexibility. Throw your coil packs back in, and then you can put your fuel system back on. Again, a little bit of oil, either right here or inside the hose. Not too much, a little goes a long way, and you can get them hoses on very nice and easily. Now, if you're at this point, feel free to look at the vacuum diagram, plug in what you can. If you don't have EGR and stuff deleted, you'll have a couple ports right up here on the bottom side of your throttle bodies. And then you have your one for the balance tube. You won't put the balance tube on until after you run your wiring harness. You can run your wiring harness before your fuel system. Usually I can get it underneath the hard lines, no problem, so I don't entirely worry about that. Now I'm going to give you guys a couple tips for the wiring harness so you don't really mess anything up. I fully understand all wiring harnesses are not equal at this point in time, so bear with me here. For the TPS, it'll be pretty hard to mess up. Your connectors will be the only two over here. Your 3-pin square connector goes to your TPS. The 3-pin oval connector goes to your TPS as well. This is the hard idle switch. You shouldn't have pulled your cast off, but that's a 4-pin. Since a lot of people seem to goof these up, always remember your O2 sensor is a 3-prong. Your O2 sensor sits right up here and will be on the exact same piece of the wiring harness. It'll be all tied together. You'll have a 2-prong right here, which is for your VTC. Now, a lot of people get your VTC and your knock sensor connector mixed up. And this connector will not be with this. This connector will be over here with, I think, maybe this cylinder injector and this cold start valve connector. This cylinder's coil pack plug will be off the harness back here that wraps around the back side, and your VTC, O2, and a couple other sensors will be right here on the side. A lot of those are usually deleted, and if you left it on the bracket right here, just leave that connected and swing your bracket down out of the way. These two cylinders for the coil pack will be on their own harness that comes back here that will be with your O2 and your VTC and your idle air valve blue and yellow connector that's down at the bottom. Usually all of these are the same. You'll have two that go to each other. If not, the straggler will go to the only one missing. You'll have a ground strap that goes right here, and you'll have two that go right here by cylinder 6. A good way to tell which way to start, your two longest plugs will be to your front cylinders, and the one that has the 3rd connector built in with the spade goes to your fuel temp sensor. So you can know kind of which way to direct those. And if when you hook this all back up, that it doesn't run right and it misfires, all you have to do, say you suspect these are plugged in wrong, you pull your connector, see if it starts to miss. If it misses, plug it back in, that cylinder's right. So then you can just swap them from there and you'll be able to find out. If you want to know your injector's clicking, if you got that on right, just put a flathead on the top of your injector cap right there. Put your ear on the screwdriver and use it as a stethoscope so you can hear for the click when the injector fires. Once the wiring harness is all fully back on, you can go ahead, put your balance tube back on, hook it to the auxiliary air control, and then you can throw your idle air valve hard pipe back on after you got your wiring harness up here and over here because it goes around it. Now, definitely check at the vacuum line diagram. Use all those to fix everything accordingly, and I hope that all of that made the most sense to you guys. All this is fairly straightforward. Again, please don't be afraid to drop a comment and ask a question. I reply to almost all comments about all the time, so please. I think that's going to be it for the video. I think I've covered about everything that I think is pretty much worth covering. And to make it just the most easy to understand for you guys, since a lot of you guys may have never worked on a car and you're going to do the plenum pull, and you may as well do this while you're there. So, I mean, this also kind of tells you how to pull the plenum. If you guys did enjoy, and if this helped you guys, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe down below so you can stay tuned for some more of our videos. And until the next time, you guys, we will catch you then. Peace.